And I want to start with kind of the serious side of My Stupid Heart, and that's the song Ferguson. There's a line in there, the blood we all bleed is the same shade of red. And it seems like you're saying a pretty clear message to me, but at the same time, in the song itself, you don't mention the city, you don't mention Michael Brown. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts as you're constructing that song.
Well, the song started off in a North Georgia cotton field, and it was the actual same cotton field that my grandmother had picked cotton in as a kid. And when she was 13, she left that area and moved to Atlanta. And then since then, my dad's generation and then mine, there was a serious feeling of the loss of one's culture when I stood there in that field, because I didn't even recognize the blooming poppy-like plant of cotton in the summer. I'd never even seen that in my life before that I could remember. And so that was kind of odd. So the song, I think I'll give you a little of it.
Sure.
All of ye fallen fathers and mothers, I hear you calling from deep in your graves. So that was all there. It all just kind of like came in, like songs do sometimes. They fly in, and I held on to that. The next trip to Nashville wasn't maybe a day, two later. By the time I got to Nashville, the whole Ferguson thing was breaking out. Excuse me. I was hearing it on the radio and on my drive up, and I stopped in a truck stop and watched a little bit on the TV. I was like, wow, this is really nuts. I didn't even know this was going on, I spend so much time on the highways and in music, either music stores, or I just typically don't pay attention. So it was like a kind of a wow, moment. By the time I reached Nashville, more lines were coming to the song, but they were changed. The meaning was being changed, without me even knowing. So Chuck Cannon and I finished that song. We worked on it most of that night, and we talked about the angle of the song. The voice of the song. Is it just about Ferguson? We knew we wanted to call it that so that it would be a reminder in history to go, this is a song that represents the time that we were in as a people. And I say a people, I mean Americans, when I'm saying that word. And so like all of us, and the whole path of it from the beginning is really what that song is. So it's not really about just Ferguson, but we titled it to almost put a little tag, time tag on it, saying, now here we are right now, and the war still rages on, and the whole thing is rotten, and the blood we all bleed is the same shade of red. It's about the race relations, it's about the lack thereof, it's about how we separate ourselves from each other, and there's still a lot of that, and there's still a lot of injustice, of course, and there's also there's other arguments on it too that I totally am confused. I never can say one way or the other how I feel, when it comes to like police brutality. Obviously, no one wants that. I got a feeling, because I've known a lot of police officers over the years, my guess is that most of them are not practicing that, what they're doing that way. I just don't believe that. So I think it's a very small percentage, and that's getting a lot of attention. But still, the fact that it's happening and that people can be profiled that way and it lead to a violent situation just because the color of someone's skin is pretty screwed up. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where that song, even though we're not talking about any particular place or event or a person even, it's the whole picture. And it starts from the beginning with the slave ships, sailed the great ocean, sold down the river, sold down the Mississippi, working all the way down, white fields of cotton to green fields of cane. So that's kind of the vibe. It wasn't just about Ferguson, but we decided to title it that. And of course, a lot of people said, "Oh man, don't name it that. Don't name it that." And and that kind of made us want to call it that even more. So.
Now, there's two. It seems to me that there's two things working in different directions here. One is that you're a white guy, but the other thing is you are from Atlanta, and I'm guessing you have probably seen the type of things that have gone on, or seen, not right firsthand maybe, but being in the community, you're aware that things are not always equal between the races and the police and folks. So I'm guessing that Atlanta gave you a perspective that maybe some other people in New York or Boston or other places might not have.
Maybe. I mean, certainly Atlanta has had its issues with that stuff. You know, you had Katherine Johnston, gosh, probably a decade or so ago. I think it's a small percentage in general, but I think it's also still wrong, and we've still got to figure that out. But yeah, I mean, race relations in the South are still, I think it is different still than it is in the rest of the country. There is a little more tension. I even feel it because I'm a white guy. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I think that's to be expected to some degree. I mean, I didn't grow up rich by any means. We were right in the middle, I would say, if anything, closer to lower middle class. My dad worked for the railroad and my mom was a school teacher, so they had good jobs with insurance. And I think that in itself is a big difference than a lot of the, kids of color I grew up with. I think it was a different deal. I still remember M-to-M transfer when they were transferring minority to majority schools so that they could give them a better opportunity and be taught by better teachers, and also mix in with white kids. That was literally what they were doing still. And this is in the late 70s and early 80s. So yes, and we've come a long way, and we've still got a long way to go.
Now, I'm be honest, I don't know your entire catalog, and 25 years is a lot of songs there.
Me either.
Well, okay. Have you done this type of song before? Has something hit you emotionally like this before that you've gotten that catalog?
Well, I think early on I sang. I think in my early 20s I was more. I don't know. I wouldn't say I was more politically minded, but I was quicker to put that stuff in my music. If I believed in something strongly, the first kind of intuition, I'd go with that. What I've learned as a songwriter over the years is that, yes, pleasing yourself as the artist is important to get out those, whatever that is. But dealing with a subject or an ideal or something that affects a lot of people other than yourself is the key to a good song too. Mm-hmm. You got to move people. Just because it moves you as a singer and a writer, it might not move everybody else. It may, so that is part of it. You find key things that people want to hear, and I think some of it also, though, you mentioned a song like Ferguson is different for me because it's a co-write, so I wrote it with Chuck Cannon, and when Chuck and I write together, it's a whole nother thing than anyone else that I write with, or when I write by myself, for sure. But when I write by myself, it's the closest thing to writing with Chuck. It's a similar feeling that and I don't know, we have a real interesting chemistry, or we don't, I don't know how we lock into a thing where we can answer each other, and that happened a lot with these songs. Well, I don't know, to answer your question, no, I haven't done it a ton, and I think it's because that Chuck and I were really interested in the challenge of writing that.
And the timeliness of it. It was happening right before your eyes.
Right.
I spent a lot of time over the weekend listening to My Stupid Heart, and so this song kept coming up, and it reminded me of the first song that I could recall growing up as a teen that was kind of a protest song. And it doesn't sound anything like it, but it reminded me of Dylan's Hurricane about Reuben Carter. And
that's cool.
Yeah, so that's why I mentioned Dylan in the beginning, and I wanted to start with this. Yeah, I was thinking of that.
Like
Ferguson,
the death of Hattie Carroll, and that's one of my favorites of the early Dylan stuff too. Mm-hmm. That era, that kind of where he's speaking about real stuff. Of course, he was going into specific people, like and Medgar Evers and all that. It was amazing. I would love to hear someone doing that more now. It's not. I've never felt like. I think stories are important for me to the degree where I want to put in some stuff that is in the imagination, and it's not always just a history thing. But I love mixing real history in. I love kind of writing from a perspective of, let's say, 150 or 200 years back. I've done that a bunch, and I love doing that.